Ford is recalling almost 500,000 small SUVs and pickup trucks in North America. The company says the affected models may lose drive power because of a battery issue. Ford says it expects to recall 450,000 vehicles, with 55,000 of them here in Canada, including 2021 to 2024 Bronco Sports SUV models. The recall will also include 2022 and 2023 Maverick trucks. Well, let's stay on this topic because an Ontario-wide coalition of community groups is calling for action from all levels of government on what they say are dangers posed by pickups and large SUVs. Their recommendations include changing vehicle designs and requiring safety warnings in vehicle ads. They say these changes are necessary to protect pedestrians and cyclists. Christopher Waters is the spokesperson for the Coalition to Reduce Auto Size Hazards, aka CRASH. He's also a law professor at Windsor University. Professor, thank you so much for making time for us today.
Thank you, Natasha.
So when you and your coalition say there are specific dangers posed by these types of vehicles, what exactly are you talking about?
Well, the statistics are pretty clear. So pedestrians involved in a crash with a pickup truck or a large SUV are roughly 3.4 times more likely to die than if hit by a conventional car. And in Ontario alone, 61% of road fatalities are caused by, or not, are not caused by, but involve pickups or large SUV, even though those kind of vehicles only represent 41% of the cars on our road. So the statistics are really clear. And the question really for us is, what are we going to do about it? Because the trend right now is towards consumers purchasing larger vehicles. And I think a lot of them just don't realize what they're purchasing. I think they just don't realize that they're purchasing oversized dangers.
Let's talk about those oversized dangers. And I'll ask Paul and Bill upstairs if we can play that video of these SUVs being crushed. This is video that we've brought in from the Insurance Institute, and essentially it shows what happens on impact with larger vehicles like the kinds that you're talking about. Talk to us about that. They've described these cars as dangerous. You're describing them as dangerous. What makes it different, though, than any other car?
Right. Well, it's all about vehicle height. So the higher the vehicle, the more danger it is to pedestrians. So with a traditional sedan or conventional car, if you got hit, you were likely to be thrown over the hood of the car. Now with these high vehicle heights, especially over 1.25 meters, what's happening is that people are getting hit in the chest and the torso and in the head, or getting knocked backwards at slower rates and getting hit in the head. And these kinds of crashes are fatal. So whereas a pedestrian had a chance of surviving a hit from a conventional car, with these larger autos, the chances are much reduced. And that's especially true for women and for the elderly and for children. I mean, the stat for children is just absolutely staggering. Kids are roughly 8 times more likely to die in a crash with a large SUV than with a conventional car. And I truly think that Canadians, when they've been purchasing these vehicles, have not been informed of these dangers. I know that Canadians don't want to put their own kids, their own families, their own neighbors, their own friends at work, and so on, at risk. But I think we haven't been adequately warned about these dangers, and I think governments haven't adequately regulated the danger.
I do want to get to the recommendations to the governments in just a moment, but I want to push back a bit, sir, because as you well know, these vehicles are often marketed to the public as being safe. Hey, you love your family, protect your family, put them in a vehicle that's basically a tank, and you'll be okay. You can drive anywhere you want. You won't get injured. Have we been sold a false bill of goods?
Well, I think, design modifications have been made to make the interior of some of these vehicles safer. The problem is they've done so at the expense of people on the outside of the vehicles. And look, this is not a sort of drivers versus pedestrian thing or drivers versus cyclist thing. We're all of us pedestrians at some point. And certainly there's going to be members of our family who are pedestrians and members of our community, our neighbors who are pedestrians. So it's absolutely not a drivers versus pedestrian thing. It's about prioritizing the safety of people outside of the cars in addition to those inside. And one of the problems with these large autos is that it leads to a kind of auto race where you think, well, for me to be safe inside my car, I've got to have a car that's equal in size to the person next to me. And this kind of like escalating arms race over vehicle size just ends up putting us all at risk. Not only pedestrians and cyclists and the elderly, kids, persons with disabilities, but also drivers of conventionally sized cars. So it's really an escalating thing that we're seeing, and sadly the consumer trends are going the opposite direction, and that's why we think it's vital for governments to act now and for people to be warned so that they can make smarter decisions when they're at the car lot.
So what exactly are you recommending to the different levels of government?
Yeah, so the different levels of government are all implicated. So at the federal level, we'd like to see data compiled and distributed to consumers on what some of these dangers are. Coming out of that, we'd like to see required changes to vehicle design to deal with things like the blind spots that occur with these larger vehicles. That's at the federal level. At the provincial level, we'd like to see some changes to the Highway Traffic Act, different ways of dealing with insurance. Why should drivers of smaller cars be subsidizing, in essence, the dangers created by larger size autos? And at the local level, there's been a lot of talk of Vision Zero in the last few years. The idea that traffic fatalities and serious injuries involving pedestrians and cyclists and others are preventable. There's nothing inevitable about these. And so we'd like to see municipalities update their road safety plans that may involve things like lead pedestrian signals, allowing people on foot to cross earlier, banning right turns. I think we should consider banning some of these vehicles in community safety zones, or maybe at community safety times. When people are walking to and from a school with their kids, should they really be having to do battle against some of these oversized hazards? The details of the recommendations are all in the report, but they include everything from the way municipalities purchase fleets to the fact that we shouldn't be subsidizing parking for these oversized vehicles. There's kind of parking inflation that goes on, and which leads to urban sprawl and combats our efforts to deal with the climate crisis. So there's recommendations to all levels of government, federal, provincial, and the level of government that's closest to us, municipalities. And so far to date, we've seen very few actions. You may have seen that Paris is charging extra parking for SUVs. It's also happening in a borough in Montreal. So these things are we know what we can do. We have a toolbox of ways of combating these oversized dangers, and we just need to start acting. But at the very least, we need to see people warned about these dangers, because I don't think they understand that right now. I might add as well that this is an Ontario coalition of 16 community groups, but we'd like to see it expand across the country, because this is an issue that affects Canadians right across our country. I want to be clear, too, that we understand that there's some people who will need a pickup truck for work, for example. I have two cousins who are in the snowplow business. This is not about telling people who need these trucks for functional reasons that they should be ashamed or should get rid of them. But if you don't need one of these vehicles, don't purchase them. You're putting your family at risk, you're putting your friends at risk, and you're putting your communities at risk. And we've been sold a bill of goods about these things. And there's some, they've been marketed in a kind of macho way. But you know what? There's better ways to be tough than driving a vehicle which poses a hazard, a lethal hazard to your family and friends. And so I think we need to push back against this bill of goods we've been sold about the importance of everyone having an extra size vehicle. We just don't need them, and we need to regulate this danger.
Okay, hang in tough, Professor Christopher Waters. Thank you so much for your time, sir.
Thank you, Natasha.